Hello, and welcome to the Human Blueprint Podcast. This is a podcast exploring the framework of personal growth, self-discovery, and resilience. Through relatable stories, humor, and actionable advice, we're going to tackle life's challenges to help you build a life of courage, confidence, and connection. I'm your host, Dahl, and today's topic is the power of boundaries. I'm going to teach you how to protect your peace during the holidays and all year long. So boundaries for me are the foundation of healthy relationships. They are the principle of self-care and personal well-being. But during the holiday season, family dynamics, social pressures, overcommitments, they push our boundaries to their limits. And in this episode, I want to explore why boundaries are essential, the types of boundaries people often struggle with, and how you can hold your ground with kindness and confidence and learn how to protect your time, energy, and peace this holiday season and all year long. So first of all, I want you to know this is an area I absolutely struggle with. I have a hard time enforcing boundaries. I have a hard time putting boundaries in place because, as I shared with you, I'm a people pleaser. I'm a 2 on the Enneagram scale. I get my validation and my self-worth from being needed by others. Look, I'm a work in progress too, y'all, just like you. But what I will tell you is that the older I've gotten, I have discovered that I need boundaries. I need boundaries in place to protect myself, to protect my family, to protect my time, my energy. I have been burned by so many people that I let into my closest area of my circle, both personally and professionally, because I didn't have any boundaries in place. So I want to talk with you a little bit about, the fact that this is an area that we all struggle in. I wrote this episode basically coming up for the holidays. I know that a lot of us are going to struggle with family pressures, societal pressures, just holiday pressures in general. And I want to continue on that theme of self-care and taking care of ourselves. I want to continue on with the preservation for us being in control and being a person to make the decision about what things are a hell yes and what things are a no. And that starts with, first of all, discovering what boundaries do you need to have in place. But in today's episode, I want to talk about why boundaries are a necessary form of self-care. I want to talk about the different types of boundaries that you might need. Some of those are time, some are emotional, some are financial. I want to talk about how they show up in our daily lives, give you some examples. I want to give you some common ways that boundaries are often violated. So how the people closest to us will steamroll right over the boundaries we try to put in place. And I want to also talk about practical strategies that I can give to you that will also help you hold your boundaries without feeling guilty. And I think that's the number one reason we allow people to steamroll over our boundaries is that we already feel badly or feel some kind of way about imposing a boundary to begin with. We're resentful for having to put a boundary in place when we're dealing with adults that should recognize the pressure they're putting on us. But we often feel guilty for having to tell someone no and worry about what kind of backlash we could suffer from that. So I want to give you some strategies on how to hold your boundaries without guilt, and then just talk briefly about how these boundaries can transform your relationships and reduce your stress. So let's get into it. If you're listening to this in the car, you may want to save this episode and come back. We're going to talk about the 10 most common boundaries that people need some help with and that they're often violated by those that are closest to us. So let's start with the first one, are just time boundaries. Some examples of this one are overcommitting, expecting immediate responses from people. We live in the world where we send text messages and the ability to contact someone very easily and often. And I think that there's a misunderstanding that just because you can send me a text does not require a response from me within 2 minutes. But we are so used to immediate gratification and immediate satisfaction that we expect these kinds of responses from people almost immediately, especially if you have your read receipts on and you can see that somebody read your message, but they haven't answered you. It's very frustrating. Or the fact, you got to remember that I used to coach a lot of realtors. People would assume that we're just available all the time, constantly, 24/7. It was not uncommon to get messages at 2 a.m. or 10 o'clock at night from other agents who are trying to work a deal or negotiate a deal. And it is unreasonable for people to expect that we are constantly available, that we owe someone a response immediately. If you think back, and I hate to use the phrase olden days, but if you think back, a few decades ago, where we didn't have mobile phones or cell phones, where all you had was a landline. If you left the home for 5 hours, no one could get a hold of you until you came back home. And so we have gone from the expectation of, oh, I'm sure they're busy, they'll get back to me when they can, or they must be out, to leaving messages on a voicemail or an answering machine, to expecting a response immediately because I carry my cell phone with me everywhere. And I saw the message, so I must respond to it right away. And I am here to tell you that that's not true. You don't owe anyone an immediate response unless something is an emergency. And unless the house is burning down, unless someone is hurt, unless it is a life or death situation or a huge timeline that needs to be met, you should not expect those kinds of timeliness from other people, and other people should not expect that from you as either. So one of the solutions for time boundaries is you can set clear limits on your availability. You can tell people, listen, I do, especially when you meet someone new, I am a big texter, but just know I don't always respond immediately, but when I am able, I will respond to you. Your voicemail can say that. You can tell people when you meet them. Or if someone is like, hello, are you there? You just simply respond, yes, but I stepped away from my phone. I'll get back to you shortly. But time boundaries are a big one that a lot of people do not enforce, especially when it comes to sales. If you are a 100% salesperson or you work on commission, a lot of us feel like we have to answer people that reach out to us with questions or concerns immediately because we're afraid that we might upset that client, or we might have to respond to something right away because they could move on and find another agent. And, you're not giving yourself the gift of time. You are being at everyone's beck and call. And I will tell you that that is the fastest way to burn out of whatever your industry is, if you're going to continue to respond to people as they come in immediately and feel that pressure that people can't wait for your response or wait for your answer. The second type I want to talk about are emotional boundaries. And these are the ones where we struggle a lot of times with because we're afraid to be vulnerable, or we are afraid to stick up for ourselves and our feelings. Or maybe you grew up in a home where your feelings were minimized or dismissed. Emotional boundaries are going to be difficult for you. An example of emotional boundaries would be dismissing feelings or using someone as an emotional dumping ground, like invalidating what someone says when they tell you that they're hurt and you get defensive, or telling someone how you feel about a certain topic and that person responding with, that's so stupid, or you're an idiot, or well, I would agree with you, but we would both be wrong. Those are just dismissing people's feelings, are an emotional boundary that, you are entitled to your feelings. You're entitled to think the way that you do. You're not entitled to hurt other people with your feelings, in my opinion. You're not entitled to be dismissive of other people's feelings or not listen to those. So one of the ways that you can overcome people steamrolling your emotional boundaries is to be firm in your convictions. It goes back to the what will you fall for if you stand for nothing. And some people are very emotionally convicted about topics and themes. Some people are very in tune with themselves and what they believe. Some people absolutely are very passionate about certain topics, and emotionally, they're not equipped with how to handle when people don't agree with them, or when people are not on the same page as them, or when people feel differently about those things that they're very passionate about. And I'm here to tell you that when someone steamrolls over your feelings and when someone, you know, basically dismisses how you're feelings, it's an easy way to just say, I can see that maybe you don't agree with me here, but it does not invalidate my feelings. This is how I feel. And I would appreciate it if you didn't mock them or dismiss them or belittle my feelings. But you have to be strong enough to stand up to someone who dismisses how you feel and belittles that, because that is them telling you that they don't care about your feelings. And you need to stand up for that and speak up when your feelings are invalidated. The third one I want to talk about are physical boundaries. Now, physical boundaries really are invading someone's personal space, touching people when they don't want physical contact. Some people are just not huggers. And I think it goes back to even my youngest son. He is on the autism spectrum, and he was not like a lot of kids that are on the spectrum. He actually loves hugs. He loves physical touch. He loves hand holding. Even at 20 years old, he still loves to hold my hand, bless his heart. But when he was younger, he would want to give other kids hugs and teachers hugs and adults hugs. And that is well and good, but you should always question and ask, is it okay if I hug you? Is it okay if I touch you? We live in a world where people are just not comfortable being touched. We spend a lot of time being isolated sometimes. And so we don't have the opportunity to physically touch other people sometimes, especially if you're working remotely and you're not in an office. The only people that are in your home are your animals or maybe a partner. You might not be used to being touched all the time. And so I think to respect people's physical boundaries, you need to ask before you come in with a great big hug. I know that a lot of people are just not big huggers, my wife being one of them. I once bought her a shirt that had a cactus on it that said, "Not a hugger," and she worked at the front desk at my office. And despite wearing a shirt that said "Not a hugger" with a cactus on it, people would still come in with a great big hug because they were excited to see her and they cared for her. But she did not prefer being hugged by people. It made her uncomfortable. And so to respect other people's physical boundaries, you need to be okay saying, hey, I know you're a big hugger. I just am not. Would you settle for a handshake, or would you settle for a fist bump, or whatever it is that's acceptable to you? But physical boundaries, especially if it is unwanted physical contact, is unacceptable. And often we deal a lot with this as women. We accept unwanted physical contact by men or by people of the opposite sex, regardless if you're a man or a woman. And I want you to know that it's okay to say, hey, I just am not a physical person. I don't like my body being touched. I'd appreciate it if you would ask me before you touch me in the future. If you're not comfortable doing that, put some space in between the two of you. You definitely need to communicate your comfort level clearly and assertively. I'm going to curse here, so if you got kids in the car, you might want to pause it or whatever. But, there's a saying from the Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered podcast that is politeness. And often women put themselves in a position with men where they are physically uncomfortable, where they are being physically touched in a way that's not comfortable for them. And out of respect or not wanting to be disrespectful, we allow that to happen. And so I'm here to tell you, you have my permission, politeness. And if your boundaries are being crossed and you don't want the physical touch that someone is giving you, then you need to communicate that clearly and assertively and feel okay saying, I would prefer you not to touch me. Please don't touch me in that way, or that makes me uncomfortable. And if people have a problem with that, if people respond negatively or react in a negative way based on you saying that, that is going to tell you exactly how safe you are to be with that person. So physical boundaries are an obvious one that people typically know how to do or how to protect. Give yourself some space. Don't allow yourself to be alone with people that make you feel uncomfortable. Be assertive in what is okay and what is not. Communicate to people that you're not a hugger if you're not. It's okay to not be a hugger. It's okay to not touch people if that's not okay with you. You are in control of your body, and you get to say who gets to touch it and who doesn't. Let's move on to number 4. which is the mental belief boundaries. This is basically the same as kind of emotional boundaries, where people are criticizing someone's opinions or trying to change their beliefs. We see this a lot in politics. Obviously, we just came off of a political year, an election, a presidential election year, and everyone is very passionate about things that they believe in and the candidates that they support. But the problem is that we have not learned how to fight with each other in a professional, courteous way. We've not learned how to disagree with people in a way that allows you to have a difference of opinion than me, but I still have respect for you. It is an art form of listening to someone who has a completely different idea than you do about how things should be, and listening with actual understanding and listening and trying to hear it from their perspective. That is an art form. It takes composure and self-control. It takes patience. It takes not listening to respond, but listening to truly understand where people are coming from and why they believe the things that they do. Sometimes they believe these things because they have limited information. Sometimes they believe these things because that's the environment they grew up in. Sometimes they believe these things because that's their experience, and their experience tells them why they believe that way. But it is not okay to criticize someone's opinions or try to change their beliefs without truly understanding their perspective. And so one of the ways, especially over the holidays when you are with your families, it is very easy to just say, let's not talk about politics. And if you live in a family, or if you're a part of a family where politics are just not a safe topic of discussion, where you guys can agree to disagree, or that you can understand their perspective, or that you can see why they value such a thing so much versus something else, another decision. If you exist in that type of family, maybe you say, hey, I think politics might be off limits for us. I think maybe we should find something else to talk about. I'm really enjoying your company, and I really don't want to talk about politics today, right? Or maybe it seems that we've had difficulty talking about politics in the past. Maybe we should spend some time, maybe not at the holiday, at a different time where we can talk about our perspectives or our thoughts about it. But during Christmas might not be the best time, or Thanksgiving, or whenever, or a birthday is not the time when you get to listen to Uncle whoever talk about what he believes and his opinion is the only way. You don't have to put up with that. You don't have to engage in that conversation. You also do not have to attend every argument you're invited to. There are people in your family and in your circle of people, or coworkers, whoever, that know how you feel because you're very public about it on social media or in your conversations. So this isn't a mystery. Some of those people like to push your buttons. They think you're ignorant. They think you don't know what you're talking about. They think you haven't researched the topic. And those people are going to continue to push your buttons as long as you allow them to. Those people are going to purposely bring up something at a holiday event or a family event to spark up drama. They love it. They thrive on it. And the best power that you have is your self-control. You can respond to these people with, Uncle Mark, this is not a conversation that I really want to have today. I'm really glad I get to see you and spend the holiday with you, but maybe we could talk about something else today, right? Uncle Mark, I really do value your opinion. I do think that you are very educated on the topic, and clearly you're very passionate about it. But until I feel comfortable being able to discuss it with you in a safe space, I don't think we should really talk about it here. Maybe this is something we should talk about at another time. And that's the kind of boundary that you can put in place when someone is not respecting your opinion, or if they call you names or tell you, belittle you or berate you for having the opinion that you do. I want you to understand, when people are this passionate about certain topics, no matter what you post on social media, no matter what you say in private, no matter how you formulate your response, there are some people that you're never, ever going to convince otherwise, or convince that your perspective matters to you in a way that would convince them to change their mind. Some people are so set in their ways and their thoughts and value system that there's not anything that you're going to say that's going to change their mind. And you might not have the ability to change people's minds, but you don't have the right to criticize me personally. You don't have the right to belittle my feelings. You don't have the right to disrespect me and my perspectives or make assumptions about my knowledge of the subject matter. And this is something that's going to be really important in the workplace for you. This is something that's going to be really important in your family dynamics. This is something that you need to learn the art of saying, I hear you and I understand that you're passionate about the subject, but I am not willing to compromise my peace or to ruin this family event by having this conversation. Maybe we're a little too close to it to have this discussion right now. But I want you to feel safe saying to Uncle Mark or Uncle Mike or John or whoever, or Aunt Linda or Grandma Pat, that this is not the time or place for us to have that conversation, right? If you are like me, I grew up in well, you're probably not like me, I'm an anomaly, but I grew up in a very political, religious household. I worked a lot on Republican campaigns growing up. My mother even served as someone who worked on Reagan's transition team when he took office. I worked at a local level getting many Republican officials elected. And then I grew up and I started to really dig into a lot of things myself. I was able to live my life authentically as who I am. I surrounded myself with a lot of people who thought like me and who, at the end of the day, really just care about people. And it doesn't mean that you're dismissive of traditional values. It doesn't mean that you're dismissive of religion. It doesn't mean that you're dismissive of the things that make this country great. There is not one party that owns patriotism. There is not one party that owns service to others. There's not one party that fits in one of these categories and the other one doesn't. I like to think that most of the country is pretty similar in a lot of the ways that we think, but we are pushed to polar opposites on certain topics, on certain ideals, on certain values, and we are each entitled to have those opinions. We are each entitled to hold dear and heavy and hold tight to the things that we're strongly convicted by. But if you cannot have a discourse that is respectful, if you cannot have a conversation where you hear my perspective, if you cannot have a conversation that acknowledges that these are my values and that they're equally as important to me. If you want to just berate me and belittle me and put me down and insult me, we're not going to have a conversation. And that boundary would exist with anybody, regardless if you're talking about politics or religion or all the other things that tend to ignite fuels in people or fires in people where they feel like their way is the only way. So I feel like that's a methodology that I have used over the last year because I am in direct conflict with a lot of people. I support some ideals that are very conservative and very traditional, and I also am, a lesbian woman with children and a family of my own. And I think that at the end of the day, we need to understand that, you don't get to disrespect me because we have a difference of opinion. Let's move on to the next one, which are financial boundaries. And these are actually very difficult for a lot of us. And some of those boundaries, examples of those would be like pressuring someone for money, criticizing people's financial choices, loaning people money is a big one. And I will tell you that there's two types of people in the world. There are opportunists and people who seek opportunity and want to take advantage of an opportunity, but they're going to work hard to make that opportunity happen for them. I come from a family of opportunists that typically stand with their hands out, that want the world handed to them. They don't want to work real hard to earn it. And I've tried to instill in my children just the opposite. I've tried to instill in my children that hard work is rewarded. I think too that it's very easy to judge people in how they spend their money because people choose to spend their money on lots of different things. But until you've walked a mile in their shoes, you don't know what kind of financial struggles they might have. You don't know what they have had to do to get to where they are. You don't know the kinds of situations that people have gotten themselves in. And sometimes it's through no fault of their own. Sometimes it's a response to a natural disaster. Sometimes it's an emotional disaster. And we are wrecked and having to rebuild our lives. Sometimes we make bad business decisions. Sometimes there's more month left at the end of the paycheck. There's lots of reasons that people have different financial situations. There's lots of reasons why people might be down one month and on top of the world the next month. But boundaries when it comes to finances, one of the solutions that I want to provide to you is just setting clear limits on lending. Personally, I would tell you that you probably shouldn't ever loan money to family or friends if you want to protect that relationship. It usually causes problems. It usually will erode or destroy that relationship. And so it's a risk, and I would advise you against it. But you need to set clear limits on lending if you are going to lend money to people. The same thing with gifting and spending this holiday season. I know my mom used to have a kind of a habit where she would spend the same amount of money on each grandkid so that it was fair. But kids were into different things. They like different things. They have different hobbies. And so that you also might have kids that are different ages, and where your teenagers might cost a whole lot more. The things that they like are more expensive versus smaller children or toddlers. Their toys are usually simpler and a little cheaper. But you should set clear limits on gifting, on what you want to spend per people, and whether or not even gifting is required or necessary, right? There are a lot of people that just out of habit will give gifts to people, not because they are truly in the spirit of gift giving. It's not personal. It's not something that they felt like the person would really enjoy. It's just something we have to get a gift. We can't show up empty-handed. And I would just tell you, ask yourself, is this required? Do we have to do gifts? Would you prefer to have a meaningful experience? What kinds of gifts should we give? Should we set a limit on those gifts or price limit on those gifts? And then, is this something that you are putting yourself into debt to accomplish? If you have to go into debt to buy gifts for people, you probably need to rethink the gifts. I'll use the example, when I was first married to my children's father, we didn't have a lot of money. He was in residency at the time. And we had, both of our parents, we had aunts and uncles, we had friends that we cared a lot about, but we really couldn't afford gifts for all of these people. And so what we did is we made homemade soups and breads and cookies and put together big old gift baskets for our parents because they really could buy themselves whatever they wanted. They didn't need a gift from us, but we wanted to show them how much we cared about them. And to this day, 23 years later, we are still getting comments about the soups that we used to make for them. Our parents still have some of the old soup containers with the labels on them in their cabinets. Friends that we gave these gift baskets to are commenting that they remember the soup basket and that was their favorite gift that they got. And so you might not be a cook, you might not be crafty, but sometimes those gifts that don't cost money are actually the most rewarding and the most thoughtful gifts that you could give someone. So if you feel like you have to go into financial debt to buy gifts for people, whether it's a birthday or client gift or a holiday gift like Christmas or something like that, ask yourself, is there something else that you could give them that might be a little bit more meaningful that is more affordable for you? Or something that could show them that how much you care about them without overspending. Let's move on to social boundaries. Social boundaries are an easy boundary for people to have a hard time with. We let people into our circle. We trust them with information that is kind of private. And we're expecting them to keep those things a secret. We're expecting them to protect our privacy. And so an example of a social boundary might be sharing someone's personal story without consent, or pressuring them to attend events because you want them to be there or you expect them to be there. Parents will do this a lot with their children, especially adult children, where, they're having a family event and they're like, oh, you have to come. You get this a lot when people move away, they move out of state, especially around holidays where parents are, well, we're going to see you at Christmas, right? Or you're coming for Thanksgiving. And as you start to grow your own family and you have children, that becomes harder. It's also expensive to travel around the holidays. People have various work schedules that make it hard for them to take time off from work. And when they do, they might only get to do it twice a year. And we're expecting them to travel across the country to come see us. That's not fair. It needs to be an open discussion with please come if you're able, but we understand if you can't. And if one year you decide, I don't want to go for Christmas, or I don't want to be there for this holiday, or I would prefer to spend my Thanksgiving on a tropical island somewhere instead of cooking for 12 hours. This is your life. You get one whack at this thing. Pick and choose what is for you and put a boundary in place when something is not for you. If your family does not respect your boundaries, if your family does not respect you or your partner, if your family does not respect your opinions, if you are disrespected, discounted, dismissed, you might need to protect your peace by doing something else. And that might be a hard thing for a parent to swallow, that their kid's not coming home. But there's also some accountability and some responsibility. And for us, we might need to respect other people's decisions to participate or decline in events that we want them to attend. I used to be a big believer in Rachel Hollis and read all of her books and attended seminars. And one of the things I learned from her was it's a hell yes or it's a no. Because we often get invited to so many things, we overcommit to things, we feel like we should meet our friends out for a drink, or we should take this meeting with this person. But unfortunately, there's only so many hours in the day, and we get exhausted and we get tired, and then the day comes and we don't want to go. And unfortunately, if we had just said no to begin with, now we don't have to disappoint someone by not showing up or canceling at the last minute. Because if it's not a hell yes, it should be a no. Do you want to attend this? Do you have the time? Do you have the money? Do you have the energy? What is this something you're looking forward to by attending the event? If you can't come up with anything positive to say about that, it's a no. If it is forced, if it is out of obligation, if it is out of fear, if it is out of anxiety, of fear of missing out, whatever it is, it's a no. I'm sorry I'm not able to come this time. Oh, I wish I could attend. I'm just too busy this time of year. I wish that we could make it. We simply can't afford it this year. Whatever the reason is, you need to feel safe saying that it is our decision. We've made a decision as a family that we're just not going to be able to go on the family vacation this year. We go into debt every year. We end up doing all the work. We pay for it. We do the grocery shopping. We do the cooking. We do the cleaning. We make all the reservations. It's not fun for us anymore. It's work. And you should feel safe being able to have those conversations with your friends and your family and whoever without feeling like you're going to be disrespected, without feeling guilty that you're disappointing people. Because when you start saying yes to yourself and the things that you want to do, you're going to not have to say no as many times to the other people, because people will start to understand that this is your boundary and that you're entitled to it. They will get accustomed to it. Boundaries are hard for people when they're new. They don't like change. They also love you and want to see you and spend time with you. And of course, they're going to miss you when you can't come. But you don't have to go into debt. You don't have to leave your house for 2 weeks and pay for a pet sitter. You don't have to attend events where you don't physically, emotionally, mentally get something out of. You can say no. So I would encourage you to maintain your privacy with certain things that you would like to be kept private, respect other people's decision, and get better at saying it's a hell yes or it's a no. The seventh boundary I want to talk about are work boundaries. And these are hard. These are super hard because we don't want to get fired. We want to be a good employee. We want our boss to know that they can lean on us. They're going to be tough. We are working with less employees. People are doing two people's jobs. People have higher expectations of them now for less money. You just have a lot of situations coming up with work right now that people are feeling underappreciated and undervalued. And there's more demands on us than there have ever been before for employees. And so some examples of work boundaries might be expecting you to be available during your vacation, on your days off, expecting you to cover somebody else's job responsibilities when someone was fired or let go or quit, where their position was not refilled, expecting people to do things at work that are really just inappropriate, right? You're there to do a job. You're not required to be everyone's friend. You're not required to be besties with your boss. You are required to show up and do your best work. And you are paid in return for that, right? But you're not required to buy gifts for people at work. You're not required to do things outside of your job responsibility. You're not required to participate in things that have nothing to do with the goal and vision of your work responsibilities. And so if you find yourself where someone is stepping over or bulldozing your work boundaries, you can remind people that you are off, you're on vacation, or these are the days that you work. You can communicate to them when they can reach out to you, when it's appropriate. You certainly can tell people that you are welcome to text me on my days off, but I'm not required to respond to you right away. I will respond to you when I'm able. You also can communicate your limits to your colleagues or to your boss. Listen, y'all, I love hanging out with you guys outside of work, but I personally cannot afford, and I don't have the bandwidth to go to happy hour 3 nights a week, right? I can't eat lunch out every day. I can't afford that, or it's not contributing to my weight loss goals. I want you to feel safe communicating to people what you are willing to do and what you're not willing to do. If you find yourself at work taking on responsibilities that are not yours, of having more and more demands put on you with no increase in salary or time off or any other benefits, you need to have a conversation with your leadership that says, here's what I'm noticing, here are my concerns, and I would like to know what the solution is going to be for it. That is a respectful way to say, I'm not happy with how things are, and we need to make some accommodations, we need to switch things up, or we might need to hire somebody else, right? But you do have the right to stand up for yourself with your boss. You have the right to stand up for yourself with your leadership team. You have the right to stand up for yourself with your coworkers, right? This is a place of business where you go to earn a paycheck. People do not go to work because that's where their best friends are, and it's a social time. You're there to do a job, right? So learn how to acknowledge what's going on, tell people what it is that you're wanting, and offer solutions to situations that are making you uncomfortable or making it hard for you to do your best work. Another boundary that we often don't talk about are digital boundaries. Because we live in this immediate world of society where people want a response right away. People want access to you immediately. People can fire off a message to you through Facebook Messenger or text messages or Instagram, or they can send you a message through LinkedIn or whatever. People have access to sending you messages, right? An example of digital boundaries would be excessive messaging, posting without permission, tagging people in things, adding them to groups without asking them, monitoring everything that they're doing online and criticizing that. There seems to be people in this world who I would call, keyboard warriors. And they are people who, they see something online and they feel the necessity to comment on it because they can, because they have the ability to. And they will fire off the most vile, disgusting things that if that person was sitting across from them at a coffee shop, they would never say to them. but they somehow have the courage to get on a keyboard and let them have it because they feel like the keyboard is their superpower, that they just have the ability to say exactly what they feel and exactly what they think without any repercussions. And while you do have freedom of speech, you don't have the freedom to be an asshole to other people all the time. You don't have the ability and the right to say whatever you want with no consequences, right? You don't even have all of the information, but you have an opinion. And I would ask you to ask yourself, is this opinion helpful to someone? Or is it hurtful? And that is something I used to have to say to my child when he was younger. Is what you're about to tell me helpful or hurtful? Because most of the time, children when they're younger and they want to talk about their teachers, they want to talk about their classmates, a lot of the things that they wanted to tell me were not helpful. They were hurtful. The things that they wanted to tell me about their classmates were hurtful, right? They were tattletaling, whatever it was. And so I want to ask you, before you go fire off this big long discourse about why you feel the way you do, ask yourself, is this helpful or is this hurtful? And is this person going to benefit from my comment at all? Because I promise you're not going to change their perspective overnight. They're not going to read your comment and go, you know what? Laura was right. I should do this a different way. It's not going to happen. You're going to cause discomfort. You're going to erode some of the relationships you have with people. And who made you an expert? Was your opinion even asked for? Ask yourself that. But one of the ways that you can protect your digital boundaries is to set clear rules for communication and privacy in the digital space. We let too many people into some very specific details that maybe they shouldn't have access to. We share a little too much information. I get spooked sometimes when I think about how much information someone has about me just from my real estate business, in the way that I've promoted my business and the way that I've promoted successes or failures or whatever. We are putting it all out on the internet for people to consume. And we are giving out a lot of data. We're giving out a lot of information. We are giving out a lot of things that can be used to harm us. And so the same thing goes with digital boundaries. Are you opening yourself up to unnecessary criticism? And why are you giving so much weight to the criticism of strangers? If people's comments bother you, if people's reactions to the things that you share are ugly, ask yourself, why do you care so much about what this person thinks? And what I tell everyone is they don't make statues of critics. Everyone is a critic. Everyone's going to criticize you whether you're winning or losing. Whether you are soaring or struggling, there's going to be somebody who has a criticism of you. You have got to know yourself well, like yourself well, and know what you're doing are the right things, and live your life with personal integrity so that it doesn't matter what people say about you. It doesn't matter what people think about you. That's their business, not yours. But you don't get to invade my space. You don't get to comment on my posts in a negative, hateful way, and I'm not going to consume it. That's the boundary that I put in self to protect my own peace when it comes to digital boundaries. You can unfriend people. You can unfollow them. You could snooze them. You can block them. You do not have to let people into your world. And for a lot of my friends and family, we have a list of family members who do not have access to us. And that boundary is a hard boundary because, of course, you want your mother or your aunt or your father or whoever to be a part of your life. But when that person causes damage to you, they do not get access to you. And you are in control of who gets access to you. And you are in control of your reaction and feelings to the things that people say to you. Let's move on to the next one, which are relationship boundaries. And a lot of people are very good at putting boundaries in place when they know something is really off, like when they've discovered something that they don't like. But some examples of relationship boundaries might be ignoring the need for personal space or overstepping comfort zones, doing things that intentionally irritate your partner, not being honest, right? There are going to be some things in your relationship that are non-negotiables, right? I want my partner to be honest with me. I want my partner to respect me. I want my partner to grow with me. I want my partner to, communicate with me openly. And there are people that, are very codependent. There are people who are hyper dependent on their partner so they don't get any alone time. There are people that, they don't feel safe in their personal relationships. There are people who their personal space is overrun, especially if you don't live together, if you're dating someone and they spend a lot of time at your house or you spend a lot of time at their house. You need to have some boundaries in place where you should feel safe saying, hey, I just need a few minutes of downtime when I get home from work. My day was really stressful today. I just need about 25 minutes to regroup and to bring myself down, find a space where I can talk to you about my day, right? But when you hit the door and it's like, how was your day today? And they hit you with a bunch of questions and you're not mentally there or ready to have that conversation with people, you're not going to respond the way that you would with gentleness and kindness, or maybe with a little bit more compassion with what you want to share with your partner. And so if you have, if you are in a relationship with someone who might need a little bit more personal space, that they've clearly defined some comfort zones for them, or, they have shared with you what their needs and limits are, then you need to respect those. And if you're with a partner that's not respecting those, then you need to feel safe saying, hey, I need to have an honest conversation with you about what I need in this relationship, or what I'm not getting, or what I'm fearful of. You can share things with your partner that say, I'm really scared. I'm scared about what's happening right now. I'm worried about what's happening in our relationship, or I feel disconnected from you. The hard part is that sometimes when our partners share things very honestly with us, it is our natural tendency to become defensive, to trying to explain why we said what we did or why we want things a certain way. But it is our equal responsibility to make sure that we understand that we need to advocate for ourselves in our relationships. We need to insert boundaries in place where we need to feel safe, or we need to feel comfort. And we need to feel safe saying to our partners or whoever that these are the needs that I have and they're not being met, and here are some ways that I think that you could meet them. You also could have limits in place. Like maybe you don't want your boyfriend to come over 5 nights a week. Maybe you decide that 4 is enough. Or maybe you've decided that, hey, I don't want the dog sleeping in the bed, but you get the right to have honest conversations and exploring what you need and want, and being able to communicate that with your partner without a fear of destroying your relationship, without a fear that it's going to turn into an argument, without the fear that you're just going to hurt their feelings. Your feelings matter too, right? So I just want you to have honest conversations about your needs, and I want you to create a space where your partners can come to you with whatever boundaries they need to have in your relationship. And then the last one are our family boundaries. And these are the biggest because honestly, our family could steamroll over all of these boundaries. But the biggest ones that we get from families are guilt tripping about family obligations, or my favorite, offering unsolicited advice. Some of our family members are very well-meaning. Some of them have a lot more experience. Some of them recognize that maybe we are in some self-destructive behavior, or they're concerned about our safety or our well-being or our financial situation. And you're always going to get their opinions on that. But I want you politely but firmly redirect their conversations and prioritize your well-being. If your family members cannot, if they guilt trip you, if they, make you feel a certain way because you've elected not to attend something, then I would encourage you to have a conversation with your family about what you have time for, what you have the capacity for, and your decision about whether or not this is something that is healthy for you. I also feel like with families, the boundaries are tough because your families know you better than anybody else. And they also know how to push your buttons better than anybody else. And so sometimes the advice that your mother gives you might be dead on great advice. But coming from your mom, you're not so receptive to hear it sometimes. And so I would ask you before you react to it, ask yourself, what are they wanting for me? Why are they giving me this advice? Are they worried about me? Are they, do they feel like I don't know how to navigate the situation and I need some help? But you get to stop the conversation or pause the conversation before you react negatively to it. You get to ask, is this person coming from a place of love and care and compassion for me, or are they trying to control an outcome? Because most family members they do care about you. They are coming from a place of love. Maybe they don't know how to say it the right way that you would be receptive to. Maybe they don't know how to approach you with the way that they feel because of the way you've reacted in the past. But I want you to feel safe politely but firmly and respectfully redirecting any conversations that are making you uncomfortable. I want you to firmly say to your family, I know you want me to be there. I wish that I could, but unfortunately, we've made a different decision this year. I want you to feel okay with making the decision that you're making and saying, this is just not in the cards for us this year. This is not possible for us this year. Okay? But your well-being matters just as much as their expectation. You protecting your peace or choosing to do something different because you guys have the opportunity to go somewhere else, or you have a little bit of extra money and you decide to take a trip instead of driving in the car 14 hours with 2 screaming kids and the pets and all the things. You get one whack at this thing called life, and you get to choose how you want to live it, regardless of the pressures that are put on you by your friends, your coworkers, your family. But you have got to be convicted enough to say, do I want to go or not? Is this a hell yes or a no? Most of the things that you come across, especially when it comes to family obligations, it's easy to say no. Hell no. Right? But ask yourself, is it important for me to show up? Is it important for me to be there? What am I going to get out of it? Right? Sometimes what I'm going to get out of it is precious time that I might not have. It might be the last Christmas I get with my grandmother. It might be the last Christmas that my parents lived in that house. It might be the last Christmas that we decided all to do gifts, or the last Christmas where mom's not in a nursing home, or whatever the thing is. It might be important for you to spend the time with your family, but I want you to do it because you want to, not because you're expected to, because it is your life and it is your choice what you want to do with it. So I do have some action steps for you for the holidays, some things. So let me just regroup real quick. We have time boundaries that people disrespect. They expect our time immediately. They expect responses from us immediately. We have emotional boundaries that people invalidate our feelings, or emotional dumping. They want us to take on all of their problems and all their drama. We have physical boundaries where people are unwanted touches or advances. We have mental beliefs or, someone's opinions, someone criticizing our opinions or trying to force their opinions on us. We have financial boundaries where people want to borrow money from us, or they want to criticize us for our financial choices. We have social boundaries where, people are pressuring us to attend things where we don't want to go. They also might be sharing people's personal stories or talking crap about people without them knowing. We have work boundaries where people have more expectations of us, or people are expecting things of us that are not work related. We have digital boundaries where people might be posting things online or commenting with no accountability or no responsibility. We have relationship boundaries where we might need some personal space. We might have some needs that are not being met. We may have some wants that we would like to see show up in our relationship. And then we have the big one, which is family boundaries, which are really hard. Choosing to Put a boundary in place with a family member that you love and care for, but that you have to limit their access is a very hard thing to do. But for your own preservation, for your own peace, for your own mental health, for your own well-being, sometimes these boundaries are necessary because you don't get to give up your peace. You don't have to give up your autonomy to make decisions for yourself just because someone is related to you. Okay? So I do want you to think about what's one boundary that you need to set this holiday season. I want you to use a boundary setting script. I have resources available for you guys that discuss these types of boundaries, that give you scripts in each situation of ways that you can say things. But I want you to practice those. I want you to work on saying things to someone that inserts a boundary and then holding it. Because I promise you, once you attempt to set a boundary, someone is going to try to steamroll over that boundary, and people will try to remove the boundary if it's not comfortable for them, if it's not convenient for them, if it is outside the status quo of what they know of to be normal. They are going to try to push your boundaries. And I want you to understand that I want you to practice self-compassion when the guilt arises. And I want you to say to yourself that setting boundaries protects my energy and allows me to show up as my best self. I am less bitter. I am less resentful. I have less of a sharp tongue when I show up for things that are hell yes versus things out of obligation. I'm much more joyful to be around. I'm much more fun. I have a better time when it's a hell yes versus a no. So I want you to let the guilt part subside and tell yourself, I don't have to if I choose not to. I do have, like I said, some additional reflection prompts for you and some boundaries scripting that you can use to help insert these boundaries. I definitely want you guys to download those from the show notes. And if you're not already, please join the conversation on social media and share your experiences with me. I would love to hear this week about some boundaries that you might want to impose in this holiday season. I'll certainly help give you some ways that you can say the things that you need to say to insert that boundary. You can find other episodes of this podcast on thehumanblueprintpodcast.com. Follow us on social media. Join our Facebook group where we can talk about the things that you're learning in this podcast and how they apply to you. I am so grateful that you've chosen to spend this last hour with me. I know boundaries were super hard for a lot of us, especially if you are a people pleaser. It is not as easy as saying, I'm going to put a boundary in place and I'm going to hold it. You're going to have to practice at it. You're going to have to evaluate where do you need boundaries in your life. You're going to have to evaluate who you need to deploy some boundaries with. You're going to have to decide what kind of boundary do I need to put? Is it a firm boundary or is it fluid? Right? Will I accept X if they do Y? Right? There are some boundaries that are non-negotiable. These are the ones that you're going to hold tight. You're going to stand behind and you are not going to allow people to bulldoze over them because they are the way that you're going to protect your peace, you're going to protect your mental health, and you're going to have a much more joyful life of feeling in control of what happens to you and around you and by who is in your life when you are in control of saying yes or no, when you are in control of responding to people who bulldoze past your boundaries, who are disrespectful to you, who are demeaning to you and belittling to you. Stand up for yourself. Put a boundary in place that says, I will not allow you to disrespect me or my boundaries. And I'm sorry that you don't like them, but they are mine, and I am going to continue to enforce them as long as I need to. And you're going to do that without guilt and without second-guessing yourself if it matters to you. I hope this was super helpful to you. I am wishing you all a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful holiday season with those that you love. And I'm hoping that this episode has given you a little bit of encouragement and strength to evaluate where in your life you might need to insert a few boundaries, giving you the language that you need in order to combat the people who try to steamroll over your boundaries, and the self-compassion to accept that this is the boundary I put in place and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. Tune in next week, y'all, where we talk about independence and self-reliance. And I am looking forward to seeing you next week. Take care and be kind to yourself.